The night he said those words, something inside me died. I never thought I'd see the man I once called my husband, the man I trusted with my life, look me in the eyes and laugh as he took everything away from me. "I've canceled all your cards. You're broke now. You'll have to beg me even for tampon money." His voice echoed through the marble kitchen. His mother stood behind him, arms crossed, a smirk twisting her lips. "Hunger," she said softly, "makes women behave fast." That moment, I realized I wasn't a wife. I was a prisoner dressed in silk. My name is Elena Hutchins. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how I lost everything and found myself. Before I tell you what happened, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know which country you're watching from. Your support means everything. And now, I'll tell you how everything changed that day. People think the end of a marriage comes with screaming or betrayal. Mine ended with a quiet smile and a phone call from the bank. It was a Friday morning in late September, the kind of morning where sunlight pours through expensive curtains and everything feels peaceful. I was sitting in my dressing room, still in my silk robe, when my card got declined for a $7 coffee. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a system glitch, a temporary hold. Then I checked my phone. Every account, frozen. Every card, canceled. My heart started racing. I called David. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. On the third try, he picked up. He was calm, almost amused. "Oh, that? Yeah, I shut everything down." My throat tightened. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Because I'm done being your wallet. From now on, you'll learn what it's like to earn something. You'll have to ask me for what you need, even for tampons." He laughed, not a nervous laugh, not an apologetic one, a cold, satisfied laugh. I remember holding the phone so tight, my knuckles turned white. I felt humiliated, exposed, like the floor beneath me had disappeared. I had been married to him for 11 years. 11 years of shared homes, travels, promises. We met at a charity gala when I was 23. He was older, confident, successful. He said I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He made me feel like I mattered. And yet, at that moment, standing in my designer kitchen with a declined card in my hand, I realized something. Nothing was ever truly mine. Not the house, not the cars, not even my own dignity. That night, when he came home, I confronted him. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "David, this is abuse. You can't just—" He interrupted me with a smile. A slow, cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Abuse? No, sweetheart, it's reality. You've lived in a bubble for too long. I'm teaching you a lesson." Then his mother walked in. Her perfume hit me before her voice did. Chanel No. 5, heavy and suffocating. "Stop whining," she said, not even looking at me. "A woman who depends on a man must learn to keep him happy." I stared at her. This woman who raised him to think cruelty was leadership. She had never liked me. From the beginning, she told David I was too delicate for his world, that I didn't come from the right kind of family, that I would never truly understand what it meant to be a Hutchins. And now, standing in that kitchen with her cold eyes judging me, I understood. She had been waiting for this moment. Something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Like a thread pulled too tight, finally snapping. That was the night I started counting the hours. Not of my marriage, but of my captivity. But that was only the beginning. The next morning, my phone was gone. David said I didn't need distractions. He hired a new driver, a silent man named Marcus, who reported every trip, every stop, every conversation. He changed the house security code. I tried the old one 3 times before realizing what it meant. I was locked in. Every time I asked for something, he made me beg. For food, for clothes, for dignity. One afternoon, 3 days after he cut me off, I needed personal items. I stood in his office doorway, rehearsing the words in my head. He looked up from his laptop, already smiling. "What is it, Elena?" I need money for what?" I swallowed hard. "For pads." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Ask nicely." His mother was there again, sitting in the corner like a shadow, sipping tea from a delicate china cup. She whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "See, you can be polite when you're hungry." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, to break that perfect composure on both their faces. But instead, I smiled. Because I understood something in that moment. If I screamed, they'd win. They would call me hysterical, unstable, crazy. They would use it against me. But if I stayed silent, I could start to plan. "Please," I said quietly. "May I have some money?" He pulled out his wallet, counted out exactly $20, and placed it on the desk. "There. Was that so hard?" I took the money, turned, and walked away. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the staircase railing. But I didn't cry. Not then. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Every painting, every chandelier, every piece of marble, it all felt like it belonged to them. I started sleeping in the guest room, a small room at the end of the hallway, far from his master suite. He didn't even notice. Or maybe he enjoyed it. The distance, the control. I tried calling my best friend Rachel from the landline one evening. It went straight to voicemail. Later I learned he'd called her too, told her I was having a breakdown, told everyone I was unstable. And the worst part? They believed him. Because David was charming, powerful. The man everyone respected at the country club, the CEO who donated to hospitals and universities. And I was the woman who used to smile too much at charity dinners, the one who looked perfect on the outside but was dying quietly on the inside. Days blurred together. I stopped wearing makeup, stopped brushing my hair the way I used to, stopped eating properly. Every time I tried to leave the house, Marcus would report back to David. Where did she go? How long was she there? Who did she talk to? I felt like I was being watched every second, like the walls had eyes. I started keeping a journal, hidden inside a hollow book in my closet, an old copy of Jane Eyre that no one would ever open. I wrote everything, the dates, the insults, the small humiliations, the way his mother would count the cash she allowed me, dollar by dollar, as if I were a child asking for lunch money. And then, one night, 3 weeks into this nightmare, I heard them talking in his office. I was walking past the door when I heard my name. I froze. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. You should divorce her soon. Get rid of her before she runs off with half. He replied, calm and confident, Don't worry. She won't run anywhere. She doesn't even know how to survive without me. That sentence burned into me. It echoed in my head like a curse. I pressed my hand against the door, and for a moment I wanted to barge in, to scream, to throw everything, to show them I wasn't broken. But I didn't. I walked back to my room, sat on the floor, and cried quietly. Not because of the money, but because he was right. I didn't know how to survive. Not yet. I had spent 11 years as David Hutchins' wife. I had attended his events, smiled for his investors, decorated his home. But I had never built anything of my own. My degree in literature sat unused in a drawer. My dreams of teaching or writing had been gently dismissed as hobbies. He had told me I didn't need to work, that my job was to be his partner, his anchor, his beautiful wife, and I had believed him. That night, sitting alone in that guest room, I made myself a promise, a quiet, fierce promise. I would learn, no matter what it took. I would survive this, until I remembered something, a detail that changed everything. The next morning, something strange happened. I was sitting in the living room, staring out at the garden, when the maid approached me. Her name was Maria. She was a quiet woman in her 50s, originally from Guatemala. She had worked for us for 3 years, always invisible, always efficient. She never spoke unless spoken to. But that morning, as she cleared the coffee table, she slipped me a small folded paper. Our eyes met for just a second. She didn't say anything, just a brief nod, then she walked away. I waited until I was alone. My heart was pounding as I unfolded the note. Inside, written in careful handwriting, "There's a hidden phone in the library drawer, second shelf, behind the books." My breath caught. For days, I pretended not to notice. I acted normal, whatever normal meant anymore. I smiled when David came home. I thanked his mother for checking in on me. I waited. Every night, I listened for them to go to sleep. David always stayed up late in his office. His mother retired early, at exactly 10 p.m. On the 4th night, I finally made my move. Barefoot, dressed in pajamas, I walked down the hallway toward the library. The house was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like thunder. I reached the library, slipped inside, and closed the door softly behind me. The room smelled like leather and old paper. I turned on a small lamp and found the drawer, second shelf, behind the books. The drawer squeaked softly as I pulled it open, and there it was. A small, old phone, a flip phone, like something from 10 years ago. There was one contact saved under R. My hands were trembling as I pressed the button. It rang twice. Then a woman's voice answered, "Is this Mrs. Hutchins?" "Yes," I whispered. "I'm Grace. I work with a shelter downtown. Maria contacted us on your behalf. You're not alone." Those words, "You're not alone," they broke me open. I fell to my knees right there in the library, crying silently, for the first time in weeks, not from fear, but from relief. Grace stayed on the line with me for 20 minutes. She told me there was a way out, a plan, but it would take time. Until then, I had to act like nothing had changed. I had to smile, obey, play the perfect wife. "Can you do that?" she asked gently. "Yes," I said, "I can." Because I finally understood something. He thought silence meant surrender, but silence could also mean strategy. Every morning after that, I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and practiced pretending. I was no longer the woman he humiliated. I was the woman waiting for her moment. A week later, he noticed something different. "You're quiet lately," he said over dinner. "Good. Maybe you're finally learning." I smiled, but inside I whispered to myself, "You have no idea what I'm learning." Grace and I spoke every few nights, always late, always careful. She connected me with a lawyer named Patricia Chen. Patricia was sharp, no nonsense, and brilliant. "We need evidence," she told me. "Bank records, messages, anything that shows financial control and emotional abuse." I started collecting everything. Maria helped me. She would print documents from David's office when he was away. She photographed receipts, emails, text messages. Slowly, piece by piece, I built my case. And I started something else, too. I started remembering who I was before I became his wife. I had been a writer once, a dreamer, a girl who believed in love and poetry and second chances. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten her, but she was still there, waiting. And now, in the quiet hours of the night, I began to write again. Not just my journal, but something else, my story, the truth. Because I realized something important. The only way to break free from someone's narrative about you is to write your own. That's when I realized. This story wasn't over yet. It happened faster than I expected. I had waited for weeks, planned every detail. But fate didn't wait for me. 2 weeks after I first spoke to Grace, David announced a business trip. Singapore. 10 days. "I'll need you to stay here and behave," he said, as if I were a child. His mother would stay to keep me company. Translation: to watch me. But this time, I was ready. The night before he left, I overheard another conversation. I was standing outside his office again, listening. His mother's voice was urgent. "You need to move faster. Transfer the house into your name. If she tries to leave, she won't have a claim." "I already started the paperwork," David said. "Don't worry. By the time I get back, everything will be locked down." I recorded every word. The phone Maria gave me had a voice recorder. I pressed my back against the wall, hands shaking, and captured it all. The next morning, David left for the airport. He kissed me on the forehead, like a father leaving a child. "Behave yourself," he said with a smile. "I will," I replied, and I meant it. I would behave exactly the way I needed to. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I acted. I packed one small suitcase, just enough clothes for 2 days. I left everything else behind: the jewelry, the designer bags, the expensive shoes. None of it mattered. Maria met me at the back door. She hugged me tight, tears in her eyes. "Go," she whispered. "Don't look back." "Thank you," I said, "for everything." She pressed something into my hand, an envelope. Inside was $500 in cash and a note. "For your new beginning, M." I took a taxi, my first in months, and went straight to Patricia's office. We filed an emergency restraining order. We froze the joint accounts. We submitted all the evidence I had collected: the recordings, the notes, the messages, the financial records. Patricia looked at me across her desk and said, "You're braver than you know." I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. But I also felt something else: free. David found out the next day. I was staying in a small room at the shelter when my phone, the secret one, started ringing. It was him. I let it ring 20 times before I finally answered. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice was pure rage. "Protecting myself," I said calmly. "You think you can win? You're nothing without me." For a moment, the old fear tried to creep back in. But then I remembered. Everything he'd done, everything he'd said. And I realized something. He was scared. For the first time, he was scared. "Maybe I am nothing," I said quietly. "But I'd rather be nothing than live like this." There was silence on the other end. Then a sound I'll never forget. His laugh cracking into something ugly and desperate. "You'll regret this." But I didn't, because that very week, something else happened. David's company was hit with an investigation. Fraud, tax evasion, bribery, everything he thought was hidden. Wasn't. Patricia explained it to me later. Someone had sent documents to the authorities anonymously. Financial records, offshore accounts, falsified contracts. No one knew who. But I did. Maria had been collecting more than just my evidence. She had been collecting his. For years, she had watched him manipulate people, break laws, destroy lives. And she had kept records. Let's just say, sometimes karma uses quiet hands. When David came back from Singapore 3 days early, I was already gone. The mansion was empty. His mother's face turned pale when she found out I'd taken my name off every joint asset. And the best part? He couldn't touch my inheritance. It had always been in my family's trust. My grandmother had set it up years ago, long before I married David. A small but significant amount, enough to start over. Something he never bothered to read about in the prenup. He had been so focused on protecting his own wealth, he never realized I had something of my own. He had cut me off from his money. Now I watched him drown in his own debts and legal troubles. I didn't have to destroy him. He did that himself. All I had to do was survive. But what came next wasn't revenge. It was redemption. I moved into a small apartment near the coast. It wasn't glamorous. The paint peeled in places. The air smelled like salt and seaweed. There was no marble, no chandeliers, no designer furniture, but it was mine. The first night, I made pasta in a tiny kitchen with second-hand pots. I opened a cheap bottle of wine. I sat on the floor, ate straight from the pot, and laughed until I cried. I had no designer clothes, no housekeepers, no perfectly curated Instagram life. But I had peace, and peace, I learned, is the most expensive thing you can own. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. David fought every step. He hired 3 different lawyers. He tried to paint me as unstable, vindictive, gold-digging. But Patricia was ready. We had evidence. We had witnesses. We had the truth. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Financial abuse, emotional manipulation, coercive control. I walked out of that courthouse with my dignity intact, and with enough settlement to rebuild my life. Not because I wanted his money, but because I had earned it. 11 years of my life. 11 years of smiling through pain. That was worth something. A few months later, I got a letter. It was from his mother. The handwriting was shaky, angry. "You've ruined him," she wrote. "He lost everything. His company, his reputation. Are you happy now?" I didn't reply, because she would never understand. I didn't ruin him. He ruined himself. I simply stopped protecting his lies. I simply chose myself. Sometimes I still dream of that mansion, the echo of my heels on the marble floor, the way I used to walk on eggshells, afraid to make a sound. But when I wake up, the sound I hear now is different. The ocean. Soft, endless, free. I started working again. Remotely at first, doing freelance writing and editing. Then I started volunteering at the shelter where Grace worked, helping other women navigate financial independence, teaching them what I had learned the hard way. Grace and I became close friends. One day, over coffee, she said to me, "You know, we should start a foundation, something for women like you." Women like me? Women who think they've lost everything but are just about to find themselves. We called it Second Sunrise, because that's what it feels like when you finally escape the night. We offer legal aid, financial counseling, safe housing, and emotional support. We help women understand their rights. We help them see their worth. And every time I meet a new woman walking through our doors, scared and broken, I tell her, "You're not alone, and this isn't the end. It's the beginning." One evening, about a year after everything happened, I was sitting on my small balcony watching the sunset. I saw a quote online that stayed with me. "You don't truly know your worth until someone tries to make you forget it." I smiled, because I remembered everything now. Every tear, every humiliation, every moment I thought I was powerless. All of it led me here, to freedom, to truth, to myself. I thought about Maria sometimes. She had moved back to Guatemala with her daughter. I sent her money every month, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude. She had saved my life in the quietest, bravest way. I thought about Rachel, too, my old best friend who believed David's lies. She reached out to me 6 months after the divorce. "I'm so sorry," she wrote. "I should have listened." I forgave her, because holding on to anger would have been like drinking poison and expecting him to die. And I was done hurting myself. I even thought about David sometimes, not with hate, not with longing, just with distance, like remembering a storm that once passed through. I heard he moved to another city, started over with a new business, a new image. I don't know if he ever changed. I don't need to know. Because my healing was never about him. It was about me. One afternoon, I received an email from a woman named Sophie. She had found our foundation online. She wrote, "My husband controls all the money. I don't even have access to my own accounts. I feel trapped. Can you help me?" I wrote back immediately. Yes, we can help, and I promise you, this is not the end of your story. Because I knew. I had been there, and I had survived. Today, I live simply. I write, I teach, I help. I have a small circle of friends who love me for who I am, not who I pretend to be. I take long walks by the ocean. I read books in coffee shops. I laugh loudly and cry freely. I'm no longer afraid. Sometimes people ask me, "Do you regret marrying him?" And I always answer honestly, "No," because that marriage taught me the most important lesson of my life. What's that? That I am enough, just as I am, without the mansion, without the money, without someone else's approval. I am enough. And when people ask how I survived, I tell them, he said I'd have to beg for tampon money. Now I own my life. I smile when I say it, not with bitterness, but with pride, because I did it. I survived the storm, and I found the sunrise. If this story touched your soul, subscribe and tell us from which country you're watching. Here, we share stories that remind us it's never too late to write a new ending. Because every woman deserves to know, you are not your circumstances. You are not someone else's opinion of you. You are not trapped. You are powerful. You are worthy. And you are free. The moment you decide to be. This is Elena's story. But it could be anyone's. Maybe it's yours. And if it is, know this. You're not alone. And your sunrise is coming.